Welcome to Not Your Typical Church Ladies, faith conversations for your real life. I'm Vicky, and each week I'm joined with my fellow workers in the vineyard, Anne and Karen, to break open the Sunday scriptures and talk about life and faith and everything in between. Join your Not Typical Church Ladies on this journey each week.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first Sunday of Lent. And if you followed us on our Ash Wednesday, this is where Vicky says you better start getting your floaties on because we're going to start diving into the deep end. Our gospel today is about Jesus in the desert and the temptation, and that transition was just after his baptism. And he goes from this super high to this crazy, desolate imagery, but always has God present with him. And again, as always, I am joined by Vicky and Anne. Hello, ladies.
Hey.
And we're going to dive right into our floaties. What do you guys got? I mean, we got a lot of different themes. Do we want to start on the first reading? Do we want to just dive into the theme in of itself? Where were your minds going when you were reflecting?
Well, I'll just start by saying a couple weeks ago when I started looking at these readings and just kind of being like, okay, what does Lent have in store for us? I did just kind of like an overview reading, of all 6 weeks of Lent. And I think I immediately emailed you guys and I was like, buckle up because it's going to be a Lent. Like I think last year we were talking about, become forever changed. We were like in the wilderness, different years, but like these readings are about destruction. Like
Yeah.
and there is a lot of letting go in the readings this Lent, but it's not like Elsa letting it go. It's like the flood destroying everything, kind of letting go, and like the temple being destroyed. Jesus is going to overturn some tables at one point this Lent. Like it's just, I don't, violent, maybe destructive. This is some tough stuff. What were you last?
Thank you, year B.
Yeah, I mean, Mark does not pull his punches, is the thing. Like we're in Mark and he's just like
I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. This is how it's going.
So that's kind of like the overview. You're welcome, everybody. Here's what we have to look forward to in the next 6 weeks.
We're here with you on it. So we're diving in and we're going to do it together.
Yes.
Just remember there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to all get through this.
Well, that's really, Lent is about the Paschal mystery, right?
Right.
It is. The dying and the rising are part of each other. They are the central mystery of our faith, right? And that is all over the place this Lent. I'm laughing a little bit because my husband always jokes about whenever the Noah story comes up, and we tend to just read the part about the rainbow at the end.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And like maybe kind of gloss over the fact that like God has just destroyed the entire world with a flood. But Brian, whenever he hears this reading, is like, never, when I put my bow in the sky, it'll be the reminder of my covenant that I will never again destroy the earth with a flood. So Brian's always like, well, he's still got, asteroid, climate change, nuclear. I don't know. Like, there's lots of other. Not that God would. Some of those things are human made, not God made. But the point is like he just always finds it kind of funny that it's like, well, I won't do it by a flood.
Yeah,
covered that one.
Did you guys ever see that? I mean, I'm going off topic here, but did you ever see the cartoon of the two dinosaurs on this like tip top of a mountain, and Noah's boat is like off in the distance, and they look at each other like, well, we guess we missed the boat. And I'm like, That's why we don't have dinosaurs.
And unicorns. I've seen that same thing with unicorns too.
So everybody, we're not going to miss the boat. We're in this together. Vicky, what is your overall thoughts?
It's funny because when we picked our yearly themes this year, for Lent and Easter, we chose grow the branches by seeking Jesus, with the idea of how it's a season when we kind of nurture that relationship. But I think Lent this year for us is a reminder that sometimes to do that, it means we're cutting back a lot of branches to get that new growth.
Right.
And we see that, right? We start Lent with the reminder that God destroyed the world at some point with a flood, and then everything else was built again after that point. This total destruction, and we see total destruction in different ways in the reading. So I think that idea of, even at the worst, it's a point for us to jump off again, to make something new. And Jesus had to let go of everything in the desert to be able to go out and do everything. So I think this week is a lot of that idea of letting go of what was once to then allow new things to form.
I'm only laughing because we are in this place in our church that transitions and all this stuff. And I just had to laugh. I'm like, maybe our theme song should be the Elsa Let It Go,
Right.
I know. But yeah, there's just so much to unpack. So let's kind of get into the readings. I mean, we talked about the destruction of the ark, and God promises not to destroy the earth by water again. But you never know what's going to happen. Anything else on the first reading that we wanted to touch base? I mean, but then again, we have this destruction, but we look at the end of that gospel and we have this beautiful rainbow and this covenant with God. And, it goes back to what we were saying for our Ash Wednesdays. God, we're never unseen. Everything we do is always seen by God, and we are created in the image and likeness of God, and God will take care of us. So again, there's that darkness, but ending in this light of this hope of future of what is yet to come.
And when does the rainbow come? Like the rainbow comes in the clouds, right? After the storm, like it's, you don't get a rainbow on a sunny day.
Yeah.
So I think if you're in a place where things are looking bleak right now, and it's stormy and it's thundering and it's dark and it's scary and maybe destructive, like what is the sign? What are the signs that give you hope? And hanging on to that, to the promise, promise, my word of the year, which I stole from Vicky last year. But like, yeah, how can you trust in God's promise even when you're in the middle of the storm?
Yeah. There's a quote from C.S. Lewis that I actually have on my wall, and I tried to quote it last year and I couldn't remember it. But it says, life with God is not immunity from difficulty, but peace within those difficulties. And I was like, how true is that? We, just because we have this faith doesn't mean that everything is going to be awesome, which is my word of the year. Everything is awesome. But it's that peace and comfort of knowing that with God, you'll be able to overcome that. And I think that that's really important, that even though it looks grim and bitter, I mean, our gospel, Jesus is in the desert for 40 days. I mean, that's got to be pretty grim. I go camping for a weekend and Vicky thinks that's grim, but we have these analogies and these visuals to help us understand this, that we could possibly be in a desolate place if we didn't have that faith in God and trust. So anything we have in our second reading for the first Sunday of Lent is the first letter of St. Peter, So is there anything, any word that jumped out or phrase or anything that stuck out at you that you wanted to kind of mention?
When you guys were talking, something stuck out to me that hadn't before, but in the second reading, there's a hearkening back to the first reading where it says, well, God patiently waited in the days of Noah during the building of the ark. And also that reminder that Noah's faithfulness to God began way before the storm happened. It was in that needing to build the ark to protect and save all the living creatures that he could, that, he had to trust then that all this was going to happen, because probably looked a little crazy to everyone building this giant ark. But that idea that God waited until Noah was ready. And so how many times in life I can think of when I didn't feel ready for what was coming, but God knew I was ready, even when I didn't. Last March, I took on a very sudden leadership role in a nonprofit I work with, and I did not feel ready for that position. I felt the complete opposite. But here in the second reading, we're reminded that God waited for Noah to be ready with the ark. So he waits until the time is right for us too.
Mm-hmm.
And our time is not God's time, right? So, God thought exactly what you were saying. He waited until Noah was ready in God's eyes, not in Noah's eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. Like, I was thinking about, well, there's a song everybody should listen to this week called Build a Boat by Colton Dixon. I think we prayed it at a staff meeting once in the last year or so. But it's about Noah. It's all about how, like, he was in the desert and God told him there was going to be a flood, and it was his job to build a boat and, get his family and get those animals on that boat. And he had to trust that what God spoke to him was true, even though it made him look crazy to everybody else, because he knew the rain was coming. And so I guess just seeing Noah as that sign of faith, that symbol of faith, when we can see something maybe other people can't see yet, and trusting that what God is moving us to, especially when I think when you're in positions like the three of us are, like when we're in ministry and we're trying to help guide these, our faith communities through a time of great tumult and stuff, but like to trust that, like, we can make a boat, like God's giving us what we need to get people safely to the future, right? We just have to pay attention to each, where his call is leading us each step of the way. Yeah, that's encouraging to me.
And that goes back to what we were talking about with Ash Wednesday about the need for community. We can't do this by ourselves. Nor do I want to do it by ourselves. But people say, "Oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual." And that's fine, but the amazing awesomeness of our faith is that we have this community of believers that can come together and worship and lift each other up in times of struggle, in times of misery and sickness or depression, anything. And also, we have heard over the couple of years, when Father Rob says Mass, he always asks for joys, because we lift each other up with our joys too. And so I think that's, we have this imaginary boat, but we have to fill it with each other to see the end. Oh, you guys, you're so smart. Okay, now we're getting into the Gospel of Mark in the desert, which is a shorter version,
right,
of what we've heard in the past. We don't hear in this Gospel of Mark the specific temptations that Jesus is being tempted to. And from what I've read and been taught and all this stuff, Mark really wanted to emphasize God's power is stronger than anything else. And so Mark didn't feel like he needed to specifically pinpoint the different temptations, just that Jesus was tempted in general. So even though it's short, what are you guys feeling and thinking about this?
I don't know, man. Sometimes I feel like that economy of language, and you're like, just Mark just gets right to the point. I mean, it hits you even harder.
Yeah.
For me. I mean, like the thing I highlighted was that like the Spirit drove Jesus into the desert. Like he was compelled, he was driven. Like he couldn't, that was not something he could say no to, right? Like it's like, I think I'm going to go to the desert for 40 days and pray and get in a good headspace so I can start my ministry. Nope. He was driven. Like, what was that like for him?
After that high of being baptized,
Right.
And having the skies opened and hearing God's voice, and then all of a sudden he's like, all right, I gotta go sit in the desert for 40 days.
No, he was like pushed. God like propelled him there somehow, right? Something was stirring in him that was like, you talked about being ready, right? God, wait until you're ready. Like, I mean, even Jesus, I guess, needed a little bit of time. He needed to take a minute, take a beat, right? Before he really started walking that path.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Vicky, do you have any thoughts of this 3-sentenced gospel?
I know it's such a short gospel, but I think the idea, it's interesting when you were talking about him being driven by the Spirit. I then went to the agony in the garden, because again, he didn't think he was ready for what was going to come next, and he was pushed by God. God was like, nope, this is where you need to go next. And at the beginning and at the end of Lent, we have like this bookend of God, the Spirit driving him into what had to come next.
Yeah.
Shoving him right in the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Noah, just like us, you guys.
Yeah. The interesting thing too is like, how many times do we feel like we have the power to make a change, but it's not ready? That change is not ready to happen. And so I'm just thinking about like Jesus, he had the power to do what he was being tempted. Like he could have had his own food. He could have, done all this stuff that the devil was asking him to do to prove that he was who he was, but that wasn't part of the plan. And like to know that, to have that wherewithal and what's the word I'm looking for? To be able to say, this, I'm not ready. This, not that I'm not ready, but the time is not ready for me to show this to you.
It's showing a lot of trust in God to
right. Or giving into that temptation, like, well, I am powerful. I too can make food if I can, and not giving into that. So even though it's the short reading, I think it also helps that we have that previous knowledge of the other readings that we've heard with the actual temptations to be able to kind of like mold it and put it into more perspective of being
Isn't
able
it
to.
interesting too how like he starts like, and this isn't in the gospel, but we know because it's in the gospels that like he gets baptized by John first, and he has the affirmation of his community and the affirmation of God telling everybody, this is my beloved son. So he has that experience, and then he has to process it though on his own,
Right.
alone for a long time.
Yeah.
Before he starts the ministry. And I just think that is such an image for us about how our faith works, right? Like we need those moments in community where we have the affirmation of the group and the support and the comfort of being together and the God moments that happen in those communal times. But like that's not it, right? You have to go, like the Ash Wednesday readings say, go to your inner room, go to your desert.
Yeah.
And that's what gives you the strength to persevere when the road gets tough, because we know it will get tough.
Yeah. And having that self-control to be patient as God was patient
Mhm.
with us, is with us, you know, to be like, no, you don't want to show off. You don't want to boast. You don't want to, it's not the time to do that. The time is to reflect and be introspective of what,
Mhm.
it's not about the here and now. It's about what's to come. So,
Mm.
whew. All right. Well,
You know what
everybody,
else? When he's done in the desert, he comes out and he's like, now is the time of fulfillment.
yeah.
And he's on fire and he has the fortitude, you know, because he's done the homework.
He knew the assignment.
He understands the assignment now. Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. You understood the
He
assignment.
understands the assignment, right? The kingdom of God is at hand.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting because before the desert, God is telling everyone, and then
Yeah.
after the desert, it has become internalized in him. That is his mission. And he, you know, and if we think even to his first miracle, when he was like, I'm not ready yet, there was this period of I'm not ready. And then after this desert experience, he's like, I'm ready, let's go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's integrated it. Yeah.
All right, everybody. We would love to hear how you can integrate and what your inner room sounded like to you and introspectiveness. So feel free to reach out to us and let us know how your Ash Wednesday and first Sunday of Lent went and are going. And if you have any thoughts of yourselves of what you would like to possibly hear in the upcoming Sundays from us, that would also be fun to hear what you guys have to think or what you guys have to say. So any last minute comments, thoughts, introspections?
Well, if you do want to hang out with us in person and not on Spotify or Zoom or on YouTube, wherever you're listening, watching us, we are going to be taking the show on the road. So the Not Your Typical Church Ladies in March this year will be at the Notre Dame Retreat House in Canandaigua, New York, running a retreat. I will have it linked down in the description box for this podcast, wherever you're listening or watching. So if you're local and want to come join us for a morning of Lenten reflection and how to practice Lent one day at a time, come join in on the fun with us.
That was a great segue. Yeah, one of our visions is to, you know, go national with this show. So who knows if it'll happen, but luckily for all of you, you have us. So no worries there. So thank you all so much for joining in. We greatly appreciate it. We do this for you guys and ladies, so you can get a little more introspective of the readings and to have a little deeper understanding of what your Lent is going to look like. So thank you for being you, and we will see you next week for the second Sunday of Lent. Bye.
Good week, everyone.
On behalf of Anne, Karen, and myself, thank you again for listening to this episode of Faith Conversations for Your Real Life. Please make sure to subscribe to wherever you're listening or watching this episode. You can find the readings linked in the description box below, and we can't wait to see you again next time on Faith Conversations for Your Real Life with your favorite not so typical church ladies.